And as far as our reading assignments, let's start, we usually start from the front, and a lot of times we don't get too far back. So how about we start way in the back? It's your lucky day. And we'll have Sister Rachel read for us. This is 14, Roman number 14, Witnessing the Resurrected Christ.
It was Peter who ran to the tomb with John. John, however, hesitated to enter the empty tomb, whereas Peter went boldly in to see whether Jesus had in fact been raised, as the women reported. Jesus had afterward made a number of appearances to his disciples, Peter being among them. But because of how Peter was feeling, there would be another very important one-on-one encounter that he would have to have with Jesus. One that would be badly needed to restore and to repair any damages done due to the denial.
All right. What damages do you think were done because of the denial? Just offhand, I mean, to make a statement like that. Restore and repair the damages done to the denial. We know that he went out and wept bitterly. We know that. But what, in your mind, now you've read this story a number of times, I'm sure. In your mind, what damages do you see as Apostle Peter having incurred because of that? Rachel, we'll start with you.
Well, the way I see it is like when you disappoint your parent. You know, there's, I don't know, it's like you feel like a failure. You know, you feel like everything that you've been taught from day one, that maybe you really didn't learn it. You know, you just feel like, well, one mess up and everything's void. You know, it doesn't matter what good or bad you did. You know, in one mess up, especially one of that nature, you just feel like all the good, all the bad, everything, nothing mattered. And then you did this, and it's just all out the window.
Yeah. So you feel pretty worthless then. Oops, that's
I would think he wouldn't want to go preach anything because he felt like such a failure. Just go do what he wanted to do and ignore everything else.
Yeah, and you're right. That's you've dialed right in, because that's exactly what happened to him. Right. So that combination of feeling of failure, and then if you feel like a failure, what's going to motivate you to go out and do the task? And,
well, I think with Peter, everything was either cloud nine or crash.
Right.
And so he was on cloud nine several times.
Uh-huh.
Jesus praised him. He was invited to go look at the witness the transfiguration. I mean, there's certain high. You know, he was sent out to go help prepare the supper. I mean, he's the one that stood up and spoke for him. There's lots of highs, but when he crashed, he wasn't the kind of guy that would just even keel. He really crashed.
Yeah.
And so he really crashed when he denied Jesus 3 times, and so much so that he was just going to throw the towel in on everything.
Remember our diagram? Remember our diagram? And we wanted to, the idea is to try to curb some of this, okay? And we don't even necessarily need the super highs. I mean, you know, it's nice to have the experiences, but I think it's better to remain kind of in the middle than even the super highs. You know, I don't know what I mean by that. What would be a super high? You know, just everyday little things. You know, should be high to us. Okay, I don't know. Then we're expecting some big things. You know what I'm saying, that may never come or whatever. But just, you know, our health, that should be big to us. You know, our brotherhood, you know, family, those things should be all wonderful to us. You know, we should, I guess, consider those super high, super good things. But then things come along and interrupt that, even what's in the middle here. And so we need to have kind of this, instead of the super up, super down, kind of rein it in a little bit. And I know we're dealing with different personality types as we see among the apostles. You know, those 12 men were just, you know, so different. Some of them were so quiet, they're hardly even mentioned in the New Testament. Right? They're there's a bare mention, you know. But then there's Peter that we're talking about. He stands out like a sore thumb, so actually we're studying him. and so there's different personality types, and it would be more on Peter's plate to rein it in more so than, say, Thomas or Bartholomew or somebody I hardly even know. Okay? I'm sure they had personalities, but this one here, was so strong he stood out. But yeah, you wonder what were the damages due to that denial?
I was wondering what if people who saw it or heard
That's what I
about
was
it,
thinking.
did it do something to them permanently? Did it shipwreck their faith or do?
Well, he was with
Some
John,
damage.
as I recall. He was warming his hands there in the fire with John. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So remember,
There
Jesus.
weren't witnesses around them once seeing him do it?
Well,
The apostles fled, but John and Peter stuck around to see what would happen.
yeah, and they were tight. I mean, how he paired them a number of times, so they were kind of buddied up. The ones that count, who saw it that made.
But yeah, I'm saying like just somebody who may have listened to Jesus, knew what he was preaching, but then saw Peter do that, who they knew was, I'm probably taking liberties with that, but you could see it, that maybe, someone who knew what was going on,
Yeah.
and said, well, if that guy's gonna deny him, I don't even need to, I'm not gonna listen to him either.
But not among the apostles, just others.
Right,
Okay,
right,
okay. Well, the
that's
woman that
right.
accused him, the
Right.
maid that accused him, said, hey, weren't you, I've seen you with him, okay, so her, for one, okay? You gotta think that they traveled a certain circuit, let's just say, for 3 years, and so I'm sure these people saw them together a number of times, that's why he was so recognizable.
Well,
okay?
that's what I'm wondering about, those people who saw, and not apostles, but just.
Yeah, and then if it damaged their faith in
Right.
some way, okay. That's a good question. I don't know that Peter, I think when Jesus looked, and when he turned and saw Jesus looking at him, I think that was the all-consuming thing, and he didn't care about this other person. However, that is something we should include in this, the damages.
Well, we know that Peter was influential. We talk about damages. He said, I'm gonna go back to fishing. They said, we're gonna
Yes.
go with you.
Yeah,
Yes.
So in a way, he was very influential, but in a way, he did, damage their faith.
yeah,
Yes. And so, the epicenter, the denial, the look from Jesus, and I've often wondered what that look was like. When you're reading that on the page in your Bible, and you get to that part where, you looked at Jesus, they made eye contact. Have you ever wondered what that look may have been like from Jesus? We can kind of pretty much guess what the look on Peter's face was, like, oh no, I didn't, call it back, bring those words back, right? But on Jesus, I've often wondered, what was that look like? Was it condemning? Was it told you so? Was it a heartbreak? Jeannie says that she feels it was more of a broken heart, a heartbreak. That's kind of how I'm leaning. I don't think that it was a condemning look. I think that would be so out of character, don't you? But
He did enough of that himself.
yeah. But so here's the epicenter. Here's the denial, all the dynamics there, the look, the eye contact, and then what Vicky's saying is, okay, the damages. How far do they radiate out? The ripple effect. You throw a rock in the pond, you just watch the ripple effect. Okay. So there was those that were there immediately. John is they're warming their hands by the fire, and he's listening to the person asking him the questions, and Peter's denying. He's probably thinking, what are you doing? What are you doing, We don't know if he was asked the question when he was, but the whole thing was set up for Peter because it was foretold. And so, but I'm wondering what he's thinking, what he's thinking, okay? So then Peter ran off. Now he's gone. Now Peter's gone.
cause they would have arrested him as well, for just being with him.
Probably, that's probably what he was afraid of,
Is
yeah.
that what he was-
Yeah, and the only reason he got in that close to the whole, scene was because John was the nephew or somebody of the high priest, right? He was a relative, okay? So that's how they got in, okay? And so, but the damages, and then, was it you, Phil, who just now said, about, they just now commented on, the influence of Peter as I go fishing. Was that you?
It
Okay.
was probably Andy.
So it just radiated out, okay? And so this is, we'll put this in the minus column. That's kind of negative reaction or effect of our testimony. But we can also turn that into a positive, so that, you know, our life can touch people and can ripple out in a good way also, which is what we see Peter turning it around, and we'll pick up on that in our next lesson. But from trauma to triumph, how that he became that positive person. So all the work invested in the man, and all the ups and downs, as Andrew said, that this total highs and lows, the crashes, all finally it hit him. Kind of like the prodigal son. But when he came to himself, when he finally reasoned, you know what, I've blown it, I need to go back. And so he reasoned within himself, and then he turned all that negative into positive, and he was the one, not Matthew or, you know, none of the other apostles, Thomas, none of them. It was the same man that Jesus had the more wrestling matches with, that became a very staunch supporter, and even if it meant death. So things just really turned around for him.
You know, those kind of people require a little bit. Throughout his ministry, he was so, you know, flamboyant, for lack of a better word. He was so, you know, gregarious when it came to things that came to the ministry. Oftentimes, those kind of people, like Andrew so perfectly said, as always, they oftentimes crash. And when they crash, not to segue or steal thunder here, but that they require more of that one-on-one attention.
Yes.
To bring them back. They require
Yes.
that connection.
Yes.
With the person who's trying to sort of, like,
Yes.
you know, feeding a squirrel, like trying to get them to come back. But they require that sort of boost on an individual basis.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
Jesus had appeared to them as a group.
Yeah.
But he needed this one-on-one with Peter.
Yes.
Because of that personality.
Yes.
Once you do that, then you reinstill that confidence, and right away in Acts 2, there he is.
There he is.
And so that's why it was important, because Jesus needed him
Yeah.
for the, you know, day of Pentecost and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cornelius later, to be that person.
Yeah.
To be that point man for it.
Yeah.
Personality was there. He didn't have to invent the personality.
No.
He just needed to alter, modify, and then regain it
Yeah.
back with that confidence.
Yeah.
But those kind of people, those, you know, high maintenance type of people need that.
Like David too.
Yeah, you
David
need
was
that
real high.
one-on-one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Low.
Yeah, he was.
yeah.
See
But
that
when he's
result.
on, he's on.
Yeah.
He's spot on, perfect, flawless in every
Yeah.
way when it came
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
But when he's down, man, it's hard to
Yeah.
bring him back, and it takes an act of God
Yeah.
to bring him back.
Yeah.
And that's what it took.
Yeah.
It took that individual attention
Yeah.
that nobody else seemed to require,
Yeah.
that we're told,
Right.
but it took it with Peter.
And you hit a good point here, you hit a good point. An act of God. Okay? However, you coupled that act of God through a human messenger. And so and this isn't just to restore. We're looking at a restoration, for sure. Okay, damaged goods, so we're looking at restoring, okay? But then there's also the initial, working with someone. And so both involve the hand of God, the working of God in the heart of that person, right? But God doesn't float notes down from heaven. Oh, this is just in, notes it's signed God. Oh, that's interesting, okay, it doesn't do that. Okay, maybe in some circles he does. Okay, not this church, okay? And so, the individual is touched by the Spirit of God, okay, because the Spirit is sent out to do that work. But God works through, fill in the blank, God works through people, that's right, okay? So, those two components are very, very important. Without God, when it's just person to person, you're only going to get so far. And with just God by itself, well, that kind of disconnects the whole plan and purpose to work through people, to work toward people, for people, on their benefit. You take person to person, that's the whole plan, okay, that's why he sent us out.
I guess I had never realized that, until we're talking about it right now, but
Mhm.
John was right there, and he listened to Peter.
For his last one, right?
No, for the first one.
Or the first one?
So he says, and Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple, of course, that's John. This is in John's, John doesn't like to reference it.
Yeah.
He says, so did other disciples. Now that disciple, John, was known to the high priest and went with Jesus into the courtyard of a high priest, so he had an inn.
Yeah.
But Peter stood at the door outside. Then the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to her who kept the door and brought Peter in. So I can picture this girl that's keeping the door.
Yeah.
Why are you here, blah, blah.
Uh-huh.
He goes out there and says, I know this man,
Mhm.
why don't you let him in?
Uh-huh.
And as soon as Peter was walking in, it says, the servant girl who kept the door said to Peter, you are not also one of this man's disciples, are you? He said, I'm not. I mean, John's standing right there.
Right there.
Because the whole interchange has to be that John knows, so the three of them are standing there. I
Yeah.
can't, I mean, it's unfathomable,
Yeah.
all that they went through, and, wow.
Yeah.
I never realized that.
Yeah.
Did John hear Jesus tell Peter he was gonna deny him, or was that privately?
Oh, I think it was in front of everyone because, yeah, it was in front of everybody,
I
yeah.
wonder if that came to mind when John heard it.
Oh, no
Yeah,
doubt.
I wonder if John's thinking, oh, there's two more coming. Now that we're in, I should probably go.
He's thinking, that's one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
right.
haven't heard any roosters yet.
Yeah. And then when that same, his friend, that girl, asks him the second time, he goes, oh no, it's coming, it's coming.
Well, then
Peter, I gotta go.
after that, this kind of makes sense. I mean, the first one,
Yeah.
she could have ran and told somebody, but then the second one, it says, now the servants and officers who had made a fire, so it's servants and officers.
Uh-huh,
So now you're talking the people that just had arrested Jesus.
yeah,
Who had made a fire of coals, stood there, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves. And Peter stood with them and warmed themselves. So now he's
Yeah.
surrounded by all these.
yeah,
Well, and the officers probably saw Peter grab a sword,
yeah,
cut someone's ear off.
yeah. Why he would want to even be in that environment, that close, it was a setup. I mean, God, he of course saw the whole thing, so to make sure he was there, but you have to understand, that evening was a very supercharged night. It was very, very supercharged. There was a lot of emotion from the guards that arrested him in the garden, taking him back, the whole skirmish that happened in the garden against the soldiers, Jesus healing the ear of the servant of the high priest, hauling him back, setting up a quick court. They would be up all night long before they handed him off to Pilate the next morning. But very supercharged, very. And so it's just amazing. Peter, under this, I guess, kind of pressure or whatever, just caved. Just caved.
But again, I think it goes back to his personality. He's the only one there. John had an in, Peter didn't.
Yeah,
None of the other apostles were there with John, just
Right.
Peter.
they fled.
Yeah, they took off. Peter
Yeah.
didn't. Peter had to see what was going to
Yeah.
happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think that goes back to his
Part of his personality,
was
he had to see.
He
Yeah.
had to
Yeah.
see what was happening.
Yeah.
And I think up until that third denial, I think he saw a lot. And
Yeah.
I think he felt enough to know, because
Uh-huh.
if it wasn't a highly charged, emotional, on edge type of night,
Uh-huh.
then why deny him 3 times?
Yeah,
He would have boldly walked in and said
Yeah.
that, as he did later
Right.
in his letters, where he
Uh-huh.
boldly proclaims,
Yeah.
I'm an apostle and a servant of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
He didn't do that,
Right.
for fear of his own life,
yeah.
which is what, we assume why he said he didn't
Yes.
know him.
Yes.
And so because of that, but yet, again, his personality is, he's the only one there.
Uh-huh.
John had an in, Peter didn't.
Right.
But Peter insisted to John that I wanna go in too, so John intervenes for him to bring him in.
Bring him in, yeah.
Peter had to be there.
Yeah.
Peter had to see what was gonna happen.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because remember, they'll never kill you. I will never deny you.
Right.
They'll never kill you.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the things he said to establish his thinking, his entire ministry. Well, now it's happening as Jesus said it would.
Yes,
And he's probably just blown away by it.
yes,
But he
yes.
has to see it. He's drawn to it. He's compelled to it.
Yeah, I mean, imagine the confusion. I mean, on the one hand, they knew he was the Son of God, but they saw him every day as a man. So you can imagine just kind of some confusion as to who Jesus was, right? They saw him as a man, but yet he wasn't an ordinary man. And so they knew that there was something different and everything.
Because they also saw the miracles and
All
the
the
leadership
miracles.
and the followers.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
of that.
And yet he showed and displayed emotions as a man, okay? So you know, we have to kind of just give him some latitude there, you know. But still, you're right, he said, they'll never take you, they'll never kill you, and then when he saw it unfolding in front of his very eyes, he's like, wow, what is just happening here, you know? So, but,
Mike?
yes.
I can't
Oh, I'm
answer
sorry,
that.
you gotta, oh, here, throw this at me.
I was just wondering, I think Andy may still be turned to it, but you know, while that was going on and he was coming through the door and everything that we were just talking about,
Uh-huh.
does it say in the scriptures what was going on? Was he already being beaten? Because, I mean, I know that they made eye contact.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Were they still accusing him at that point?
It was interrogation to start with.
So they
before
hadn't
the
been
meetings, yeah.
beating him, cause I was just kinda wondering what
Yeah.
John and Peter were witnessing.
Yeah, the Jews didn't beat him. They slapped him.
Okay, so he hadn't been, he wasn't in,
Roman mode, yeah.
okay.
No,
Okay.
no, this was all the Jewish court, the Jewish, the soldiers, the temple guard, as it were.
It was early morning when they led Jesus from Caiaphas to the Praetorium. So from the Jews over to the Romans, it was
Yes.
early morning.
They were up all night interrogating him
So it was the
and
next
slapping him around and all that kind of stuff. With their fists, they were blindfolding him and saying, tell us who if you are the Christ, who you know, hit you. So they were just short of whipping because they couldn't do that part. The Romans had to do that part, okay. So just short of it, I mean, the crown of thorns, I believe that was all Jews, or wasn't all that part, the robe. And so, but yeah, it was just awful, and Peter's right there in the thick of it. Meanwhile, Judas Iscariot, he's fled the scene, and he's gone off and killed himself. And so, well, let's grab this next one here. Let's see, Marlene, we're gonna give that to you. On the back page, we're gonna wrap this up.
Okay. Peter's self-confidence as a disciple had all but vanished. He no doubt felt unworthy by being named an apostle of Christ. He just could not bring himself to that pinnacle of performance that he once had experienced. His self-image had become shattered. Satan rarely mounts a frontal attack. It is most often from the blind side. He likes nothing more than to sneak one in on us and to break our confidence in Christ and our boldness to serve him. If you have ever experienced a setback such as what Simon Peter went through, then you can appreciate Jesus' compassion toward him and the gesture that Jesus made to restore his confidence. Jesus needed to confront Peter face to face and to put his negative experience behind him if he was ever to go forward in his service. And that is exactly what Jesus did after Peter announced to the other disciples that he was going fishing. This, however, would be a fishing trip that would change his life forever. It was Peter's deep down desire to please the Lord that served to bring him back to serving God from living in defeat the rest of his life. He was able to overcome the disaster that rocked his faith. In the book of Acts, he is seen with the other disciples waiting for the promised comforter who would come upon the ecclesia there in Jerusalem. Perhaps it was during those 10 days of having to wait upon the Spirit that Peter had given his life a serious looking over. He must have wrestled with the thought of whether he really wanted to remain in the Lord's work or not. Thank the Lord for his wise decision, for we see a completely changed man in the book of Acts. He really had become converted just as Jesus had prayed he would. He told himself, I can do it, I want to do it, I am going to do it.
I'm gonna do it, okay? So, when we look at a man like this, we can only appreciate his victory by first wading through his junk, okay? If a person just reads the first and second epistle of Peter, they can get the good out of it. But when you have the backstory of this man's life and all that he went through before he reached that, now that adds a whole dimension. You notice even on television they do this, on these reality shows. They like to do the backstories of the contestants. That just adds another layer of interest to the show. Okay, when they bring in, the other information that's pertinent to this person and why they're there and why they're doing what they're doing and all that. Well, it's the same thing with this man. Okay, when we travel with him through the Gospels and we see the whittling and the sanding and the shaping and the ups and the downs and all of this, and then we arrive at more of a finished product, although I wouldn't say he was finished because even in 1st and 2nd Peter he wasn't finished. It's still more to work on. In the book of Acts there's still more to work on. But we're never going to be finished, right? We're never going to finish. When we sign up with Jesus, it is a lifelong journey. It's just infinity. It just keeps going. The time that it stops is when we die. That's when it stops. And as the book of Revelation says, as a tree falls, so it lies. There it lies. Okay. And so he that is righteous at his death, okay, he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. He that is filthy, let him be filthy still. So we will land in our spot at death, right? And so that's why we push and push and push and encourage and edify one another to keep going another step, okay, that it will be worth it all, like the song says. And so it's a lifelong journey, and along the way, it will be expected, John 16:33, it will be, want to read that for everybody? It will be expected that we have these ups and downs, maybe not as dramatic as the Apostle Peter, but think about it. It was only as dramatic as it was because he was with Jesus personally, and the exchanges and the things that Jesus was telling them about. He was saying, no way, that's because he was with Jesus. Well, we might not have those extremes, but think about our lives. They are full of, experiences, and some of them not very good, okay?
A bit of an obscure analogy, but you look at like the wavelengths of light. The shorter the wavelength, the farther it'll go, especially into resistance. Down, I think it's something after like 50 feet or something in water, blood looks blue because the red light, it can't penetrate. It has that wider wavelength.
Okay.
It takes that more energy, or expends more energy on that top. Those first layers of resistance, and whereas the blue light with its shorter wavelengths, it can go farther down to, I think, almost to where it's black.
Wow.
And it's just a bit of an obscure analogy, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
but-
Yeah, different wavelengths. And so you just take in your life experiences. Some of them you look back with very fondly, just warm fuzzies, okay? And then some of you look back and they're not warm fuzzies at all. They're prickly pear cactus experiences. But they've all brought you here nonetheless. Not one of them has kept you away from the Lord. Okay? In fact, it's those that help drive you toward the Lord. And so they are very much needed. Right? They're needed. Okay? Well, let's just cancel those out. From here forward, Lord, just give me good days. Just give me good days. Well, I'm thinking of a Proverbs, and I'll have to find it. I think it's Proverbs 30. I've referenced this before. It's Proverbs 30, verse 7. And Brother Brian, I'll have you read that. 7 through Proverbs 30, 7 through 9. Proverbs 30, 7 through 9.
2 things I request of you. Deprive me not before I die. Remove falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food allotted to me.
All right, let's stop right there. Okay, Old King James says, feed me with food convenient for me, or allotted to me. Okay. All right, stop right there. So he's saying two things. I'm asking 2 things. Okay, give me neither poverty. That's one extreme. Okay, or what was it, riches? So just don't lead me into the dire experience of poverty as one extreme, or even to the extreme of wealth. Okay? And now he gives the reason. He's going to give the reason why. So two things I'm asking of you, Lord, as I travel this life, as I seek to follow you, here's the reason why.
Lest I be full and deny you, and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God.
All right. So he realized that either one would drive him to extreme behavior. Okay? If he was thrust into poverty, then he would find himself stealing to get it. Okay? And taking the name of the Lord in vain. Okay? I preached a message on taking the name of the Lord in vain several years ago. That's not only what you think. Okay, it's been reduced to that thought. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. Take the Lord's name in vain. Okay, it can include that, but that idea is throughout the Old Testament. It was their behavior and their actions that contradicted the covenant that they were under, and the way that God brought them near to Himself. Their behavior was totally 180 opposite of that, and so they were profaning the name of God to the Gentiles around them. So you talk about, the effect, okay? The ripple effect. And so God was concerned about that. You are basically soiling my name to the Gentiles, okay, through your behavior, and I have set you up as my people. And so that would be one extreme where he would would alter his life to the point where he would be taking and discrediting the name of God, okay? But on the other hand, he was also concerned about being too wealthy, because he thought that would drive his, this would be more of his actions, this would be more of an attitude, where he would then say, well, who needs God? I mean, I've got it all. Who needs God? Okay, lest I be full and deny thee, and say, who's the Lord? Yeah? And so he was concerned about these extremes. And so we don't necessarily, he said, I'm asking for these two things. What did he say here? Before I die. Okay? So basically, keep me in the pocket all the way up till I die. Okay? So don't let either one happen to me. Okay? And so we don't want to necessarily erase the negative, because it works for our good. Because Romans 8:28 says what?
All things with
All things work together. They're woven together. So all of our experiences are woven together to present themselves overall as good. And I've made this, Julie, you're going to remember this. This is my infamous arrow, okay? Where we have in our traveling, in our life for the Lord, okay? We're going along, and then all of a sudden there's a setback, right? And then we rebound, and we go forward, and oh, there's another one. Didn't last as long. We'll go forward, and then now we're being pepper sprayed. Oh, now they're coming at us now in waves. Okay, but notice what we're still able to do in spite of it. We're still advancing. We're still making progress. We're still covering ground. Okay, so these are okay. This is okay. We don't like them. They're very unpleasant. Very unpleasant. They bring tears. They bring anguish, sleepless nights, all of that. Okay, but if through it all we remember the psalm, I think it's a psalm, it says, weeping is only through the night. Joy comes in the morning. Weeping is but through the night. It's temporary. Joy will come in the morning. Well, this is the weeping. As long as that joy does come in the morning, we're able to pick up and go. Okay? There'll be other nights of weeping, but overall we're able to advance. That's what we're talking about with the Apostle Peter. Okay? That's exactly what we're talking about. And so he did advance overall in his life. Well,
How much longer did he live? How much longer did he live after Jesus?
Did Peter live?
Yeah, do we know?
I don't know how much longer. I don't know how much longer,
Maybe
but
another 30 years.
it could have been.
30 years, I think it was in the, was it like the mid-60s that he died, like something like that.
Well, he was contemporary with Paul, right? No, okay. Because Paul entered the scene later, okay, but now they're contemporary. And I believe Paul wrote some of these epistles AD 58, AD 60, somewhere in there. Okay, so there's another 30 years beyond Jesus, right?
And he was crucified? Is that-
The tradition says that he was crucified, that when he was about to be crucified, he asked to be crucified upside down because he was unworthy to be crucified in the same manner as Jesus. And so, is that conversion? Is that a display of conversion? So, Jesus' words, let's go back there, where was that? Was that Luke 24, where was that? When I prayed for you, was it 21?
Yeah.
Verse 31, Luke 22:31. So Luke 22:31. Ally, do you want to read 31 through 34? 31 through 34.
And the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. And when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. And he said unto him, Lord, I am ready to go with thee, both into prison and to death. And he said, I tell thee, Peter, the cock shall not crow this day before that thou shalt thrice deny that thou knowest me.
All right, so just goes to prove that the Lord knows a little bit more about us than we know ourselves, okay? Oh, I will never, this is what Phil was saying, I will go to prison with you and I will even die for you. I will go to the death, okay? And that wasn't the case when the moment was that to, stand up to the plate, he failed. So, but it says that when you are converted, so that's why, we keep referencing the converted man, the converted apostle. He wasn't converted yet. He had the knowledge, he had all the information swimming around in his head, but there was it's like I saw this animated ad on my email for a liquid plumber, and they show this pipe, and they show this humongous clog, and then in the animation, you pour in the liquid plumber, and it just dissolves that clog, and the clog just goes down to the bottom of the pipe, and everything's floating again. Well, he had the information sitting above the clog. Okay, it wasn't going anywhere. It was just sitting there. Okay, until this experience that we're talking about with the intersection of Jesus, Jesus removed the clog, and for those next 10 days, he thought about it. What am I going to do? I can picture him just kind of pacing up and down the seashore there. Afterwards, just okay. I know that if I get back in, he's going to expect all in. And if I stay out, and I can picture him saying, okay, on the other hand, if I stay out, how can I stay out? Is that really a choice for me? How can I stay out? I picture him wrestling with this, okay? If I get back with him, it's for life, I'm all in. If I don't, how can I not? So I think he was in a dilemma, but he finally sorted it out. And that's why I think, talk about supercharged, he was wound up pretty tight by the time Pentecost came. He was wound up so tight. He had resolved the issue and said, I am all in. And all in. So that's the conversion. That's the conversion, okay? And so, but it didn't end there. Just when you're converted, great. No. And that's what we talked about. It's God and what? What's the other component? God and, as far as the working of in our lives, it's God and, you forgot already.
Man.
Yes, man. People, okay? You forgot already. It's God and people, God and people. So when you are converted, okay, what was he to do? Edify the rest. You know, be that vehicle for the people, right? And so don't just keep it in-house, okay? Share it. Strengthen your brethren. Okay, so that's why we see that he knew exactly what he needed to do. All right, well, let's stop right there. Next week then, Lord willing, we will conclude this with our final lesson. And it's not nearly as long as this one, so it shouldn't take that long to get through it. Maybe a couple weeks, 3 weeks, I'm not sure. We'll see. I like the conversations which stretch it out, okay, which I really like. I like the comments. Okay. So okay, well let's close in prayer.